So, if you're in the business world at all, you know sustainability reporting is absolutely everywhere. But, trying to compare what one company says versus another, it can feel like you're comparing apples, oranges, and, I don't know, a lawnmower. It has been a seriously chaotic landscape for years. In this explainer, we're going to break down how we're finally, maybe, moving from all that chaos towards something that looks a lot more like clarity. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of the problem. For any business leader, any investor, really anyone who's just curious, trying to make sense of all these sustainability disclosures has felt like trying to crack some kind of secret code. I mean, the sheer number of different standards and frameworks has created this total alphabet soup of acronyms. For the last 2 decades, you had this explosion of different groups, all well-intentioned nonprofit organizations that popped up to tell companies how to report on their environmental and social impact. So you had the GRI, the SASB, the IRC, the list just goes on and on. And the thing is, each one had its own unique perspective, its own special focus, and its own set of rules. And all of this created what you could only call the sustainability reporting maze. Now, the intention behind it was great, right? Everyone wanted more transparency. But the result was this incredibly complicated environment where it was almost impossible to get a clear apples-to-apples comparison of how companies were actually performing. And just look at the scale of this thing. By 2022, a whopping 96% of the world's 250 biggest companies were putting out sustainability reports. Think about that. That is a massive jump from just 45% back in 2002. So the demand for this information is clearly there, it's undeniable. But the quality, the comparability, well, that's a whole other story. And this quote from researchers Efalabi, Ram, and Rimmel just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the paradox we were in. We've got more reporting than we've ever had before, but the very foundation it was all built on has been super unstable. Without one single agreed-upon standard, how can you really tell if one company is doing better than another? Or if they're just, playing by different rules? So to really get why it's been so messy, the research we're looking at today uses this brilliant metaphor, the contested arena. And this is key. This wasn't just a bunch of groups failing to cooperate. It was an active, strategic competition for influence and control. So don't think of this as some quiet, technical committee meeting. No. This was a playing field, a strategic game where every major player was trying to shape the rules to favor their own approach, to defend their own authority, and honestly, to make sure they stayed relevant. And here are the key players in that arena. You've got the companies themselves who have to do all the reporting. You've got the rule enforcers, like the European Commission, who have the power to make this stuff mandatory. You've got governments setting the stage, and of course the stakeholders, investors, the public, demanding the info. But crucially, you had those issue amplifiers, the standard-setting bodies themselves, all trying to become the dominant voice. But then, pretty recently, the whole dynamic of this arena just got turned on its head. Two institutional heavyweights stepped into the ring, not just to join the competition, but with the explicit goal of bringing some serious order to all that chaos. On one side, you have the IFRS Foundation. These are the global heavyweights behind most of the world's financial accounting rules. They created a new board, the ISSB, with the goal of creating one single global baseline for sustainability. And on the other side, you've got the European Union, which told its own advisory group, EFRAG, to develop mandatory European standards, the ESRS. Now, this is super important. They started with slightly different philosophies. The IFRS and its new ISSB standards are built around a concept called financial materiality. This is all about the investor. It basically asks what sustainability issues, like climate change or water shortages, could actually affect the company's bottom line and its overall value. It's what you'd call an outside-in perspective. The EU, on the other hand, took a much broader view called double materiality. This is a game changer. It includes that financial piece, but then it adds a whole second lens, impact. It doesn't just ask how the world affects the company, but also, and this is the key part, how does the company's actions affect the world? Its impact on people, on the planet, so it's both outside in and inside out. Now, you might be thinking, okay, two different philosophies, two massive players, this is going to be a huge fight for global dominance, right? A big clash. But what happened next was actually pretty amazing and incredibly constructive. Instead of fighting, these two titans started talking. They started looking for a way their standards could actually work together. And the magic word that came out of all this is interoperability. It sounds technical, but the goal was really simple and honestly profound. Let's align our standards so closely that a company can basically report once and satisfy the core requirements of both systems. This was all about avoiding a massive headache and a ton of duplicated work for businesses around the world. And you can see just how well they pulled this off by looking right here at the core pillars for climate reporting. I mean, this is the most developed area of sustainability disclosure, and look at that. The structure is almost identical. Both standards demand disclosures on governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. The basic architecture is totally aligned. What this means in practice is huge. Because of that high level of alignment, if a company follows the European ESRS climate standard, it has already covered almost everything required by the global ISSB climate standard. The overlap is just massive. You can think of the European standard as a superset that contains the global baseline plus a few extra bits. So here's how it works in the real world for a global company. Let's say you operate in Europe. First, you deploy the more comprehensive European ESRS rules. Then, using the official guidance that's been published, you can easily spot the handful of extra little things you need for the global ISSB standard. You just add that little bit of info, and boom, you're compliant with both. No need to start all over again. So, where does all this leave us? Have we finally achieved global harmony? Well, we have definitely taken a giant leap out of that chaotic, contested arena and into a much more structured world. But the story isn't totally over just yet. Okay, let's just recap. That old, messy arena has been completely transformed by these two dominant players. They've managed to achieve a really high degree of alignment, especially on climate, which is a massive win for everyone. It means investors can make better calls, companies save time and money, and it makes it way harder to greenwash performance. But, and this is a big but, that fundamental difference of double materiality in Europe is still there. And right now, the EU standards cover more ground, with specific rules for things like biodiversity and social issues that the global ISSB is still working on. And that leaves us with this final, really fascinating question for the future. Are we actually heading toward one single universal set of rules for sustainability? Or is this new reality, a world with two highly aligned, cooperative, but still distinct rivals? Is that the new global standard for how we measure a company's impact on our world? For now, only time will tell.